We've got an all-new Starlink DC Power Kit that allows you to run your Starlink directly off your 12 or 24 volt house batteries without needing an inverter. It's a great way to set up your Starlink for the optimal and most efficient use of power, and it works on all of the current dishes that are out on the market and the previous ones as well. Come along with us, we'll tell you all about it. Now, we've been in the DC power game for Starlink dishes and for a little while, a little over a year, I think at this point. This is one of our most popular units. This is for the Starlink Gen 3, and a very similar looking unit works with the Mini as well, with a dongle. But there's been a lot of different kind of directions we've had to push customers in depending on the dish choice they have. So as we were looking to develop newer solutions, we wanted to consolidate a lot of this into a single product line. Now, these other units that are more dish specific will still be available, and I'll put a link down below to our Starlink kind of resource center area where we've got all of our Starlink products at starlink.mobilemusthave.com. So you may be able to save a few bucks if you just want something for the Mini or the Gen 3. But if you're looking at the Enterprise dish, and we've got another video on the Enterprise dish, which I'll share right there, and it'll be in the description as well. Or if you're looking at the high performance fixed mount, that's the bigger dish that we initially launched with, then this kit is going to be the one you're going to want to look at. The reason being is that the high performance fixed mount and the Enterprise dishes can both consume more power than the Mini or the Gen 3 standard kind of consumer level dishes. So if you're looking to kind of future-proof yourself, this might be a great solution for you because it works with all the dishes. Having more power available or a higher kind of max rating doesn't mean you're going to use more power if you have a Gen 3 dish. It just means it's available to you. It will always consume or use whatever the dish needs, regardless of the specifications on this unit. So this unit is rated up to 350 watts, which is quite a bit of power. I can honestly say that my Starlink fixed mount high performance typically kind of hovers in the 75 to 120 watt territory. It's very rare they need this much power. It's usually only in snow melt conditions, but you've got it and it's available. And what it means is the components inside of this are upgraded, and they're going to create a more stable power situation, especially if you're putting additional loads on your house batteries. Running a microwave or something else with a big inverter, this can kind of put up with a little bit more of that than our previous version with larger capacitors and larger componentry. As I mentioned though, it's not going to consume that much power or more power simply because it's rated for it. That's not how electricity works. Giving you kind of a quick overview, I'll give you a close-up of the unit here. We've done some major upgrades in this unit from the previous one. The first you might notice, it might be hard to tell from the video, is that this is now an anodized aluminum case with a nice dark gray powder coating on it. Next, you'll notice that there is a cooling fan integrated into the top of the unit, and that is a thermostatically controlled cooling fan. It won't necessarily run all the time. It'll turn on when the unit hits certain operating temperatures and then turn off when it's not needed. Well, we put that in place so that it wouldn't burn out the fan necessarily prematurely by just running 24/7. We've also added here a power button, and this is one of our most requested feature adds from our previous models. And this really allows you, without removing any wires or doing anything, to either reboot by power cycling or to turn off your Starlink dish. And because these units are super power hungry, I don't care which dish you have, they consume significantly more power than if you were using a 5G solution like our Roamlink products or our Peplink products like the router you see here. So it's really nice to be able to turn them off, especially if your Starlink is your backup connection. I turn it off at night typically anyway, or when I'm in motion because I just don't need it. But you can leave it on or turn it off. The power button kind of gives you those flexible options. Some other things that you see here that we had in the previous generations is a blue power LED light that you see there, and then our PoE output port here that goes out to your Starlink dish, and our LAN local area network port that goes into the router that you're using to control the Starlink. Wrapping up the walk around of the device just so you kind of know all of the high level, but then we'll dive deeper into how this works and optimal wiring and things like that. This orange protective cover here, if you flip that up, you'll see you've got your screw down terminals for your power input. So this supports technically 9 to 36 volts of power input, but it's really designed to run on a 12 or a 24 volt house battery bank. So you've got your positive for your positive 12 volts or 24 volts. Your negative would go to the negative or black terminal, positive being the red terminal on your battery bank. And then the third port is, which has looks like an upside down Christmas tree. That means ground, and that would connect to the chassis ground. So you would screw that into a piece of metal somewhere in the vehicle, and that would provide you lightning protection. We've got specifications on the lightning arrestor that's built into this that will give you lightning protection since the Starlink dish will be up on the roof. Moving on, we've got a blue power light here. That's nice. That'll tell you that the unit is online and powered. And we've got two nice screw down ports here on the side that'll accept like a number 8 screw. I don't think you could get a 10 in there. So about an 8 or a 7 or a 6 would be good for mounting the unit. And then flipping it around to the other side, we have our PoE output, power over Ethernet output. That's what powers the dish. So PoE would go to the dish. LAN or local area network would go to your local router that's controlling your internet solution, like our Roamlink and our Peplink solutions. We'll talk about that a bit more as well. So if you're new to all of this, we'll cover kind of who this kit would work for and why. And then we've got some USB output ports here. And it's important to note that most normal USB outputs at 5 volts. Our USB-A port that looks like a regular USB port here actually outputs at 12 volts. And the reason for that is we have a optional cable that goes from that USB port into the 4-pin connectors that our Peplink devices use. Pretty much all of the current models use a 4-pin Molex connector. And what this does is it allows you to run a small pigtail from this USB-A port, and it will power up the Peplink. So you have a very clean solution where you only had to run power from the battery in one location. Then we've got a 5-volt USB-C output here, and this is technically there for your ability to actually, there's some like really kind of low-end routers that some folks have told us they're using in certain cases that you can pick up on Amazon and stuff. And a lot of those run on 5 volts. So we said, all right, we'll include a 5-volt port here as well. And technically you could use this port to charge your iPhone or something else. Don't use the 12-volt USB-A port, but the USB-C port that looks just like the plug on the bottom of your Android phone or your new iPhone, those are 5-volt out, and it shows the voltage right on the front there, as you can see. And you could charge a phone with that as well. Now, right on the back of the unit, you've got your mobile must-have sticker here, and you've got a QR code there. That QR code can be scanned, and it will drop you right to detailed installation instructions for the unit, so you kind of understand how you're going to wire it up. But we are going to cover some of that in later parts of this video. So if you're new to how all this 12-volt stuff works, we'll cover some of the basics and some of the stuff that you really want to make sure you get right. So who is this kit for? Well, honestly, if you're looking to just DC power your Starlink, and you want to use the Starlink router and you're not interested in a more advanced router or having cellular backup so you can park under a tree or have more than one internet source, this might be overkill for you, honestly. And it's not designed to work with the Starlink router. So they do have kits available where you can basically get a little power. It almost looks like a little power supply that takes 12 volts and then outputs to the factory Starlink router. And those are on Amazon. We don't stock them just because they're sort of a dime a dozen, and there's not a lot of tech going into how those really work. So if that's all you're looking to do, you may want to go in that direction, and our support team might be able to help you out with a link to where you could go. But these kits are really more designed for folks that are either using the Starlink high performance fixed mount dish or the Enterprise dish, or they want to take the Mini or the Gen 3, those are the two consumer kind of level dishes, and they want to use them with more advanced routers and more advanced technology to round out the Starlink solution. We love Starlink. It's great. We're a Starlink dealer. I use Starlink quite a bit, but we find that typically on the average, trips around the country, somewhere around 50 to 60% of the sites that I park in will show up as obstructed on the Starlink. And I'm not interested in really, starting to put dishes out into parking areas where they can be hit, or having other problems where I've basically got to turn part of my camping experience into a internet setup situation. So my dish is fixed mount on my rig. I love it when I'm out, out west, and I've got complete sky. It works very well for me, but it is fully integrated into my Peplink solution that controls that Starlink, shows me information about when I'm obstructed, gives me the ability to know when my Starlink is online or offline, and then it can combine with my 5G connections with Roamlink or with whatever carrier you use to really give me a total solution. So I can either use Starlink and drag and drop the priorities, or I can only use 5G and drag and drop whichever one is in priority one, or I can drag them both into priority one. And with the Speed Fusion technology, I can use both at the same time. So if a Starlink satellite goes away for a second, I mean, a lot of people don't know, but there's about a 1% or 2% packet loss with Starlink, just because of how the satellites are traveling across, and there are gaps in that coverage. And that packet loss can really mess with Zoom calls and other stuff. So when I'm on the road and I'm working, I love the Starlink. I get some added download and possibly some really good upload speeds with it, but I combine it with my 5G, which blows the doors off of it speed-wise, typically in almost every condition, but it really helps round out the solution, especially if I'm in an area where I have congested cell towers, or I'm really out there and I don't have any cell service. The point being, more than one internet connection is what these routers give to you. And this allows you to bring your Starlink into the DC power that honestly it was designed to run on anyway, and not have to worry about running an inverter. So if you do have a Starlink high performance or an enterprise dish, it's going to come with a power supply, and this is it. And this weighs, for kind of you van lifers or folks, this thing weighs 3 pounds, like 11 or 12 ounces. It's almost 4 pounds. It's heavy. This weighs 14 ounces. So this is a much lighter solution. This is taking 120 volt street power, and it is down converting it to 51 volts of power. This is taking 12 volt or 24 volt battery power, and it's up converting it to that same 54 volt voltage. So this thing's like it's built like a tank, and it's not bad. It's just incredibly heavy. And it's something that I was really glad or happy to get out of my setup after driving around with it for the first couple of years, just because it's so heavy. And if you don't have a always on inverter setup like I do with my Victron setup and my full lithium batteries, it means your internet's going down all the time when you're disconnecting power or turning off your inverters. So that can be a challenge, and this addresses that by letting you just hook it up to your batteries and you're done. If you've got the Starlink Gen 3 dish, your router is actually your power supply, so it's powering your dish. So you would remove that router and you would kind of get rid of that entire box that you have there, and you would replace it with just this. So from a wiring schematic perspective, for all of these installs, what you're talking about is running power to the device, and then you've got one cable going up to the dish and one cable going into the router that's going to control all of your solutions, and then potentially optionally one cable that runs from the USB-A port to this to provide power to this. And that's it. That's the whole setup. So this is largely designed for permanent or semi-permanent installs. It's not to say you couldn't run your dish up and down or out. I've actually had a lot of customers that have a permanent fixed mount dish on the roof, and then they have a Mini that they travel with in case they need to run it out to a location because they're parked under a tree. And because this kit allows you with just a standard Ethernet cable to unplug the PoE port up to the dish, you could just pull out the dish cable that's going up to the roof and plug in a kit that would go to your mini or your secondary dish to run it out into a field. Again, I would just get a 5G solution for that, but it is an option, especially if you find yourself where there's just no cell coverage. Most of the people who tell me there's no cell coverage are thinking about cell coverage like this, and this is not how you get cell coverage. It works fine for a phone, but when you start adding in antennas and permanent installs, I mean, if you're going to do mobile internet seriously, a roof antenna is the way to go. It's incredibly rare that we don't have cell coverage that's operating at the speeds of what we see at Starlink. So each his own, whatever design you want. You want to carry multiple dishes, or you want to do a 5G Starlink kind of redundant backup solution. This kit will get you there either way. Okay, so let's talk about dish compatibility, because I told you this works with all the dishes. And it does, but certain dishes have different plugs on them, so you want to be aware of that. I'm going to kind of start from the top and go down from the high performance all the way down to the mini. We'll go in that order. So let's start with the high performance. The high performance fixed mount dish comes with a proprietary cable. That's a big fat category 8 cable that goes into the dish, and then it comes down and it goes into this big power supply. We have an adapter dongle that's on the listing page that will convert that cable, and it will take the HP cable and it will turn it into standard Ethernet, and then we give you a small little 1-foot Ethernet cable, so you're done. Then the HP dish with the small dongle will be DC powered with this and converted to Ethernet. We also sell a cut kit that allows you to cut the cable, not by the dongle, and basically put your own end on your HP dish using a category 8 toolless termination kit. So you don't need to buy any special tools to use it. You just need a nice pair of wire cutters and you can get away with just that if you want to cut the cable. So for people who don't want to cut the cable, we have a dongle, or we have that cut kit. So that gets you from the dish into this PoE port. The rest is as I described before, and again, instructions on that QR code with wiring diagrams to finish the rest. Now we're going to go down to the next dish, the Gen 3 dish. Out of the box, you can just plug the Gen 3 dish right into the PoE port using the included cables, or you can pick up a shorter cable from us, depending on what your installation method or needs are. Okay, so now we move down to the mini dish, our smallest and our last dish that we'll cover before we go a little bit into some legacy dishes that aren't sold anymore, but we will cover that as well. The mini dish does not support power over Ethernet. It has a DC power plug in it. We have a dongle that will take this PoE out, and it will basically split it for you into weatherproof connectors that can go into the mini dish. So you'll have a power and an Ethernet for the mini dish. So that dongle you would use, and then you would want to buy one of our marine grade Cat 6 or Cat 5, it doesn't matter, but from us, we sell shielded marine grade cables that fit into the dongle that's up on the roof with your mini. So there'll be one wire coming out of PoE that goes up, and then that goes up to the roof, and then that splits in a dongle. I'll show you a picture of that, to the two wires that would go into the mini dish. And all of that includes all the waterproof housings to get you DC power connected. Now it's worth noting, and I'll link this in the description below, that we have a full kit using this style for the mini, so that, and you could save a few bucks. It's a little bit cheaper for everything, and you don't have to go with this kit. This is really for Gen 3 Enterprise or HP users that want kind of a hardened, more robust unit than going with our first generation, which we still sell. But this is a plastic case, this is a metal case, this has a cooling fan. It's just a bit more of a higher end unit. Okay, so now talking about Gen 2 dishes, those are the ones that had the articulating head and basically the pole integrated into them. We have a dongle. We don't sell it, but we can link it to you if you want, that will convert you from that Starlink kind of proprietary cable end into the standard Ethernet end. So all you'd need to use this kit would be that adapter unit. I haven't sourced them myself personally because that dish is discontinued, but they're all over Amazon and we can point you in the right direction if you need one. So that pretty much covers all the dishes. If you had a Gen 1 round dish, message us. I'll do some quick research and figure that out. It shouldn't be a problem to DC power it. It largely had some specifications similar to the HP, so we have more than enough power to power that dish. It's just a question of adapting the cables or cutting the cables so that you can get standard Ethernet on there for DC power. All right, so let's talk about powering this unit. 350 watts is a lot of power. How often are you going to use it? Pretty much never, but you know, in initial boot up, the high performance fixed mount dish will call for north of about 180 watts to 200 watts, just to make sure it's there and to make sure it's not going to have problems in the future with snowmelt. So you do need to have that to make the dish function and boot up. So in order to make sure that you're covering yourself, I'm just going to strip off the insulation here of some marine grade 2 wire, hookup wire that is in 10 gauge. It looks a lot like Romex from home wiring. It's about exactly the same size as a 14.2 Romex cable, but the inside is stranded copper wire that's designed for RV and marine use. So you can pick this up on Amazon. Again, we'll send you a link. It's possible we may, if you see in the links, we may actually start selling this. It's just with all the tariffs and everything going on, wire prices are kind of uncertain, so we're holding back on that right now. But essentially what you have here is a nice big, this is tinned copper inside of this wire, and you can see it's got a nice big, I'll give you a close-up of that, connection point there. So what you're going to want to do if you want to DC wire your Starlink is you're going to want to use at the minimum 12 gauge cable, and 10 gauge would be preferred cable, and you want to keep the distance from this unit to your batteries as short as possible. If you're using a nice big fat 10 gauge, you could probably do 25, 30 feet or so, but shorter is always better. And in a lot of RVs, you'll find, especially in Class A's, your batteries may be way in the back, but you may find that up in the front, like in my Integra, underneath the driver's seat on the outside, there's a whole fuse box that controls all sorts of things. My slide relays and everything else are up there. So they've run a big 4 gauge, massive big wire from the batteries up to that compartment. So you can tap off of those big battery post terminals on your sub fuse boxes to create a shorter run for a DC installation kit like this. So before you start, go around and find all your fuse boxes. And if you look for where your fuse boxes are, chances are you've already got DC power run to that location, and all you're trying to do is tap off the back there and go up to the Starlink. Now, if you do tap off of it, I would recommend you add in another fuse box in that location for your accessories. But if you're looking to just run this straight up, or you want to put your fuse box up in the cabinet where all this stuff is, that's fine. Just note that from wherever you grab power, either the batteries or your secondary fuse location, you need to add a fuse there, because that protects the wire up to wherever you're going. So you would typically, if you were running a 10 gauge like this, you could fuse that with a 25 amp fuse, or you could go higher if you're going to add more accessories up top. Just note that you have to have another fuse box up top, like our 6-circuit fuse block up in the upper area. And then you can run a large fuse from the bottom where you're grabbing your initial power, either the batteries or your sub fuse box. And then up top, you could have smaller fuses to protect each of your individual items. So, make sure you fuse and then protect this wire. Once you come up to this unit, we've had a handful, probably 5 to 10 customers, and we've probably sold over 1,000 of these units at this point, who have accidentally shorted out this unit by reverse wiring the polarity. A big common thing is people put in these like SAE quick connectors, and they don't realize that the quick connector reverses the direction of the wire. When they're using like little leftover parts from like trickle chargers or stuff they had left over, they're like, oh, this gives me a quick connect. And the red and the black wires, they flip when you use those connectors. So if you're not paying attention, you're going to run 12 volts to the ground here, and they've already grounded the lightning arrestor, and it blows up the whole unit. We can tell when that happens, so it's not really a warranty item. We can look and see that the capacitors have been blown, and we know why. So just be careful and make sure to test with a multimeter. that you've got 12 volt going to this unit, and that you've got your polarities corrected before you hook them up. Now, we've had some customers tell us that these little terminals here are pretty small and that they can't get the wire to really get in there. And we understand that. And we've actually started having small connectors here that will accept larger wire. And we're sourcing those right now. So those will be in our listing page shortly. You can reach out to us if you need those. We'll start including them in the kits when we get them. But kind of a little hack that you can kind of avoid having to wait or need that is if you take a standard fork connector, which is they look like this. They look like little forks. You can pick these up at any hardware store. You want the yellow one. I have a red one here, but the yellow one will accept a 10 gauge wire. And then just take a pair of snips and just snip off one of the forks there. And boom, now you've got yourself a nice connector that's going to slide right in perfectly into this, and then you can tighten that down, and it's going to give you a nice clean installation that's crimpable and insulated. No, you're not losing any meaningful amount of copper or reducing the amount of connectivity you have by doing that. Honestly, it was probably better than mashing down a wire or trying to cut the wire a little bit to get it to fit in there, so don't do that. So a little bit of a trick on how to wrap up your install and get it done quickly when you're wiring this up. Another thing I want to make sure folks know is that this lightning arrestor ground port is incredibly important for the dish to function properly. The way the Starlink really gets up to full power is it uses the sync or the ground connections that are in that cable. So if you look at, now it's kind of hard to see on the dish, but if you look at the connectors that are here, you'll notice that the outer edge of this is all metal. And that's actually the same metal that's connected up to this ground. And when the dish is trying to return the voltage to balance out the positive with that ground, it's using the ground from that cable. So we've found that if folks don't hook this up, the dish can have some additional packet loss. So make sure you ground this to chassis. You just take a small wire and you go from here and then go somewhere in the vehicle and ground it to metal. If you're not sure if you have a ground, it's very simple. Grab your multimeter and just take 12 volt positive on the red wire and then touch that metal that you were gonna go to screw into. Make sure it's not painted. And if you get 12 volts, that means that is a grounded piece of metal that you can screw into. Whether it's the chassis, the back of a cabinet, there are chassis grounds all over the place. If you're in a pinch and you don't have a chassis ground, you can jumper the negative to the ground here with a small wire, and that will connect those two together and that'll bond basically that. Just note that that's going to impact your lightning protection. So ideally you want to ground this to the chassis ground, you want this to go to your battery, this negative, and then you want this positive to go to the positive on your battery. That's the right way to do it. But technically, if you're in a pinch or you're just setting it up for testing, you can loop connect to the negative and the ground, and the unit will fully power up and power the dish as intended. Last thing I want to mention with this type of wiring stuff is if you do pick up, if you're trying to use like dongles that we sell so that you can use a regular Ethernet cable instead of the Starlink cable, make sure that everything that you buy is shielded and has those metal Ethernet ends on them, because if you don't have a shielded cable, that Starlink dish doesn't have that ground, and it possibly will error out and say low DC power voltage power supply issue in its logs, and it may not ramp up to full power, and it may create some packet loss. And unfortunately, if you don't have a Peplink, the Starlink app won't even, in a lot of situations, even tell you that. Even though the dish is reporting all of this additional information that the Peplink can read, the Starlink router and app don't tell you any of that. So that can leave you kind of in a lurch unless you email Starlink support, which could take weeks, and then they can look at the logs and figure stuff out for you. So just be careful with cables. Make sure you buy shielded cables. If you're not sure what cable to buy the cable from us. We have the cables that are tested that work perfectly and are what you need. Thanks so much, guys. Sorry that video was a little bit longer and we got into more technical stuff, but the questions come up quite a bit in post-purchase support. So I figured the folks that are really kind of looking to buy this stuff are probably watching these videos and digging a bit more into it as they figure out what they need to buy to optimize their setup. If you have any questions at all, you can reach out to us at info@mobilemusthave.com. You can reach out to us in the bottom right-hand corner and start up a chat. And as always, you can just call us, but it's easier to schedule a consultation if you're not sure what to buy by going to talk.mobilemusthave.com, pick a mutually agreed time, and speak to an expert who can help you get sorted on whatever you need. As always, we have our price match guarantee that's available, so you'll always get the best price with mobilemusthave.com. And check out our memberships. Our memberships are pretty cool at membership.mobilemusthave.com. You get discounts on this stuff, 10%. You get upgraded 2-day shipping. You get access to the Mobile Internet Resource Center. You get discounts on all of our data plans, roamlink plans. You get multi-plan discounts. The memberships typically pay for, you get discounts on Peplink products, all accessories. The discounts typically pay for themselves within a year. It's also worth mentioning that welcome RV SnapPad. These guys are new, so we're now carrying the entire RV SnapPad line of pretty much all of the most popular units. If there's something we don't have, let us know and we'll make sure to get it in stock for you. We're sort of rounding out that product, but our goal is to cover pretty much everything, and members get discounts on that as well. Hughes Autoformer, everything. So, you're looking for tire pressure monitoring, Viair, our whole suite of products and solutions. A lot of people think we just do internet. We do quite a bit. I think we were the 3rd or 4th largest Viair dealer in the country last year. So, which was surprising to us, but we move a lot of that stuff. So we're experts in it. And if you have any questions about anything mobile, we're here to help. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you on the road.